Hello, Salesforce enthusiasts. Welcome to Be Tech Ninja, your journey from novice to ninja in tech. In this video, we delve into the fundamental concepts, best practices, and hands-on examples to empower you in harnessing the full potential of Apex Triggers in your Salesforce development journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more Salesforce tips and tutorials. Now, let's get started. Question: how do you handle trigger exceptions? You can answer it like, handling exceptions in Apex Triggers is important to ensure the smooth execution of trigger logic and to provide meaningful error messages to users. You can use try-catch blocks to catch exceptions and take appropriate actions. Let's understand what does the try-catch block mean. Try block is where you write the code that may throw exceptions. In the catch block, you catch the exceptions thrown by try block. You can log the exceptions on the developer console or in a custom log object depending on the use case of your application. Let's take a look at the given code sample. In the given code sample, we have defined a trigger named EMP trigger on our custom object named employee, and this trigger is set to execute before the records of the employee custom object are inserted. We have used try-catch block to track the errors that might occur during the execution of the code. We will put the trigger logic in the try block. In case that code throws any error, the catch block will capture it and display the error message in the debug logs. Question 2. What is the purpose of Trigger.old and Trigger.oldMap? You can answer it like, Trigger.old and Trigger.oldMap provide access to the old versions of records, allowing you to compare changes during trigger execution. By looping through Trigger.old, you can compare old and new values for fields in a record during an update operation. On a related note, you might be thinking, how can we access the Trigger.old and Trigger.oldMap variables in an Apex trigger? In order to understand this, let's go through the attached code sample. In the attached code example, we have defined a trigger named EMP trigger on our custom object named employee, and it's set to execute before records of that object are updated. The purpose of the trigger is to perform some logic by comparing the old values of the records before the update with the new values. Question 3. Explain the difference between Trigger.new and Trigger.newMap. You can answer it like, Trigger.new provides a list of new records, while Trigger.newMap maps record IDs to their corresponding new records. Trigger.newMap is beneficial when you need to correlate new records with existing records based on their IDs. You might be wondering, how can we access the Trigger.new and Trigger.newMap context variables in the Apex trigger? To understand this, let's go through the given code sample. In this example, we have defined a trigger named EMP trigger on our custom object named employee, and it's set to execute before records of that object are updated. We loop through the records in the Trigger.new context variable to access all the newly updated records. Inside the loop, it attempts to retrieve an existing record with the same ID using Trigger.newMap.get method. Later on, developers can perform any logic to compare the old version of the record with the new version and take appropriate actions. Question 4. How can you use a trigger to enforce field-level security? You can answer it like, field-level security, FLS, in Salesforce determines the visibility and editability of fields for users based on their profiles and permission sets. In Apex Trigger, you can use the schema object type class to get information about the fields and their accessibility. You might be wondering how to apply the field-level security in the Apex triggers. In order to understand this, let's go through the attached code sample. In the given code sample, the isAccessible method is used to check if the current user has read access to the birth date field. If the user doesn't have the read access on the birth date field, then the error will be returned. Question 5. What is the purpose of the isExecuting variable in Trigger? You can answer it like, the isExecuting variable is often used in Salesforce triggers to prevent recursive trigger execution. Recursive triggers occur when the execution of a trigger on a record causes the trigger to fire again. Without proper handling, this can lead to a chain reaction of trigger executions, potentially resulting in governor limit errors or unexpected behavior. The isExecuting variable is a Boolean variable that acts as a flag to control whether the trigger logic should execute. By using this variable, developers can prevent the trigger from firing recursively within the same transaction. In the attached sample code, you can see the common pattern of using isExecuting to avoid trigger recursion. The isExecuting variable is declared as a static Boolean variable. Before the actual trigger logic is executed, the trigger checks the value of isExecuting. If isExecuting is false, the trigger proceeds with its logic and sets isExecuting to true to indicate that it's currently executing. Once the trigger logic is complete, isExecuting is set back to false. This pattern ensures that the trigger logic is only executed once per transaction, even if the trigger is recursively invoked. By controlling the execution flow with the isExecuting flag, you can prevent infinite loops and efficiently manage trigger behavior. It's important to note that while using isExecuting can help prevent recursive triggers, it's also crucial to design triggers with care, keeping in mind the order of execution, governor limits, and the potential impact of trigger logic on performance. Recursive triggers should be avoided unless absolutely necessary, and best practices should be followed to handle them effectively when required. Thank you for watching. Subscribe now for more Salesforce development content. Feel free to leave your questions and comments below, and stay tuned for more Salesforce tutorials and best practices. Happy coding!